Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys, how are you? Ah!
In this video, we're
Jeez, internet. Guys, I typed in a thing, and I saw a thing I liked, and I clicked it, alright? Original link to the video, top of the description, below that, link to the Discord. We'd love to have you, makes it easier for me to interact with you, see your recommendations, P.O. Box, Patreon if you like British shows, all down there. Let's go. Preemptive sub. I said...
We're going to see how this transformed into this.
By the way, guys, I've seen a lot of British... I tend to get into, like, a certain, like, feel with videos I like watching, and then I watch a lot of them. I've been watching a lot of, like, nature stuff with Britain, and a lot of your land seems very barren. And I don't mean that, like, it's beautiful in its own way. But there's like a ton. I noticed it really on the last, one of the hiking videos I saw. I think it was a Liam video. Liam Brown. Where, like, giant slopes and hills, but all grass. And so I'm wondering, I'm like, okay, it's not that large of an island. It's been inhabited by people for a long time. And so maybe a lot of the wilderness was knocked down and knocked down for lumber or fuel or whatever, or made way for housing. But it just seems like it's hard for me to tell how much of it is naturally like that and how much of it is a result of, you know, deforesting it for certain purposes over the millennia. So don't know if that's going to be talked about here, but
Of how the landscape was reborn, of how biodiversity flourished, of how its owners found financial stability because of this transformation. This is of course the Knepp Castle Estate, a pioneering rewilding project here in the UK that has paved an alternative route down a wilder path that all UK farmers can follow if they wish. But first, let me tell the story of exactly what happened at this cloggy, claggy, klodgy, muddy agricultural estate, because that's exactly what it was and had been ever since the war. The Knepp Castle.
I just want to say that I'm thinking of it. There are a ton of extremely barren places in the United States, and there are obviously a lot of forested areas in Britain. So I'm hoping I'm not making too much of a generalization.
The state had been for the best part of the last century intensively managed agriculture, with the Dig for Victory campaign during the war seeing the parkland closest to the house turned for crops. After the war, agriculture continued at Knepp, much like the rest of the UK. Meadows, peatlands, woodlands and hedgerows are all being cleared to facilitate more monoculture crops. And at Knepp, the story was no different. By the time the now owners Charlie Burrell and Isabella Tree inherited the estate during the late 1980s, there was no let-up in the pressure to run a productive farm here in the UK, being part of the Common Agricultural Policy, whose damaging agenda was on producing as much food as possible through the use of damaging chemicals and intensive farming techniques. Charlie and Isabella worked tirelessly on the use of damaging chemicals and intensive
Oh, I'm an idiot.
farming techniques.
I thought that I was like, why are they using trees to clear the land? But that's obviously the stuff that's been gathered as they've gone. So never mind.
Charlie and Isabella worked tirelessly to run a productive farm at Knepp, but they were up against a tireless foe, the mud. Because you see, the land at Knepp just is not conducive with modern farming techniques. And in the words of Charlie Burrell himself, he says that in the summer it's like concrete and in the winter it's like unfathomable porridge. Unfathomable. That's a good word. And they struggled year after year through these heavy clay soils.
Did I get that right?
Continuously modernizing and diversifying and following the best practices that all the other farms on better soils seem to be having so much success with. And by the end of the 90s, with debts mounting up, the estate was facing financial ruin. It was at this point, in February of 2000, that the decision was made to sell the dairy herds and farm machinery and put the arable out to contract, clearing the estate's debts. And this left Charlie and Isabella with a blank canvas, a chance to try something new. But this decision wasn't without criticism, with one of their neighbouring landowners. Chance to try something new.
Hey, bud. What's up? I would love to hang around farm animals. I could do it all day.
This decision wasn't without criticism, with one of their neighbouring landowners labelling them as unpatriotic. But following this decision, it enabled them to think openly and to think freely about what to do next. And it led them to meeting with Dutch ecologist Frans Vera, who in that same year that Nep made this crucial decision also released his book in English, Grazing Ecology and Forest History. And the premise of his thinking is that the British landscapes and European landscapes, well before intensive management, any kind of agriculture.
A deer?
In Europe,
they look like moose horns. Like more flayed out, like more like this and then spiky rather than just like
European landscapes, well before intensive management, any kind of agriculture.
You know, like this is what I'm used to seeing. Even that's a big rack on a deer. Sorry. Sorry, I'm an idiot. I see you guys say, you know, I hope I don't really notice when I self-deprecate. I appreciate your comments down there. But I don't know, I say it. But this is usually the stuff you see on a moose, and I'm like, there are no moose in Britain. But that's just a giant deer rack.
Management, any kind of agriculture.
It's amazing.
These landscapes would have been governed by large herbivores. Bison, aurochs and beavers, creating a mosaic of open woodland with meadows, grasslands and water systems flowing freely, creating a truly biodiverse dynamic landscape. In simple terms, Frans believes that if you want biodiversity to recover, all you have to do is release these large animals and let them kick off their natural processes, allowing them to do the work while we, as the ever-tinkering humans that we are, we just sit back. And with this newfound idea, that's exactly what Charlie and Isabella began to do at Nep. Although work didn't begin straight away by releasing animals, they had to remove all of the land drains and around 70 miles of internal fencing. And that very summer, they noted the sounds of insects throughout the air. And for a period of around 7 years, they allowed the land to just do its thing, to recover. By this point, they had acquired funding to erect a ring fence around the estate so they could release grazing animals. And this is where the magic began to happen. Releasing the English longhorn, a proxy for the now extinct auroch. However, the longhorns behave and interact with the environment in the same way, both browsing on trees and grazing on grass, and carrying over 200 interact with the environment in the same way.
Okay, it is separate. I would cut that horn maybe. It's gonna... There's a pig, guys. It frickin' words hard. There's a pig from like South America. I don't know where it's from, but it has like a wild. It's kind of an ugly looking animal, but like it has a bunch of tusks that curl in, and apparently, a lot of the times it actually pierces the animal's head and can kill it. Fun fact.
Both browsing on trees and grazing on grass, and carrying over 230 different seed species in their hooves, gut and fur. And Exmoor ponies at Nep take the place of the extinct tarpon, but they again function in the same way, having a really interesting relationship with the cattle. You see, it's the horses which are able to eat through the much longer and coarser, rougher grasses and plant life. It opens up the much fresher and shorter grass lower down, which the cattle love. And you can also find roe, fallow and red deer, rubbing their horns and nibbling branches and defecating, all the while creating new opportunities for life. They haven't got wild boar at Nep, but they do have Tamworth pigs. And amazingly, at Nep, they've observed them swimming down to the bottom of the lake to retrieve mussels, but also, of course, causing great disturbance in the soils, rooting and lifting, creating space.
Guys. Pigs or boars, in my opinion, are the most superior animal on the planet, okay? Including humans. Well, maybe not humans. My favorite animal. But they breed a lot and have a lot in litter. They're very aggressive. They are super... They can eat like anything, and they seem to be able to live anywhere. I just think it's such a good model for just I guess a life form, I guess.
This is for all of the delicate wildflowers to flourish with protein-rich seeds. And it's this dynamic system of grazing disturbance and nutrient cycling of large free-roaming herbivores which has been lost from the UK, but you can start to see its impacts on a very small scale at Nep. But what has been so crucial at Nep is maintaining this perfect balance of herbivores and plant lives. that has yielded this like super diverse ecosystem. If you have too fewer grazers, what eventually happens to the landscape is you get closed canopy woodland, which actually isn't that great for biodiversity. And if you have too many grazers, well, you get an overgrazed landscape. But in maintaining the habitat to allow for areas to be at different phases of succession, this has meant that Nep has exploded with wildlife. Hundreds of new bird species have visited or taken up residence at Nep. You will find all 5 species of owl. They have turtle doves, which during the 1960s had a population of 125,000, which is now just down to a couple thousand. But at Nep, they have as many as 30 or 40 individuals, which is far greater than any other conservation areas in the UK. They have one of the rarest species of bat, the Bechstein bat. And if you get down on the ground and have a look, you'll find countless species of dung beetle in the dung of cattle, but you do have to get down and have a look at it. And now they even have some nesting storks, which is just amazing. But crucially, for the landowners, Nep is making money. And one way is through ethical and sustainable meat production. I mentioned previously that it's important to keep the right assemblages of herbivores, and without natural predators, they have to be culled. This puts healthy and sustainable and ethical meat on the market. They also receive high-level stewardship from the government for the rewilding work that they do, and they also let out many of the older agricultural buildings to local businesses where they can set up, and this maintains something like 200 jobs. But I think most interestingly at Nep is their ecotourism business. You know, their wildlife safaris, their tours, their accommodation, and this generates around £460,000 a year with a 20% profit margin. You know, and this venture doesn't just make them money, it also provides the British people with a first-hand experience of nature, of a wilder nature. And you know, the really remarkable.
Another thing in a place like the UK or British Isles, where it's like you think of a developed nation, I think you think of the UK, long developed. I'm sure to see a resemblance of what it must have looked like when it was a lot more wild. It'd be really cool for people living there.
The remarkable thing is that all of this took place in just 20 years. That's such a short time frame. It's testament to wildlife. You know, it knows what to do. All we have to do is just facilitate it and let it take the reins, and it will find a way. But this success story shouldn't stop at Nep. This pioneering work and the lessons that we've learned can be applied across the UK. You know, obviously not every farm can be managed in this way, but how many small and struggling farms out there, just like Nep was, could benefit from adopting this type of management? Or how many larger farms and larger landowners could just do this on a smaller proportion of their land? To start an ecotourism business that could make infinitely more money than arable land ever could. And the reality is that over 70% of all UK land area is under some form of agriculture. So there's a huge opportunity for this. And another really exciting part of this is the new ELM scheme, environmental.
It is pretty crazy, 70%.
And management that is going to pay landowners to effectively rewild their lands, to put nature first, so that we can all as a country benefit from the many services that a healthy ecosystem can provide. Check out the stuff that's on the screen now, but in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Live curious.
Really cool video. And as much as, you know, you hate to see stuff, you know, killed or eaten, am I wrong to say that, like, if you see predators, or even, you know, if humans are able to take meat, you know, animals for consumption in a ecological way or in a sustainable way, kind of the same concept. But if you see predators or something, I feel like if you see predators often hunting animals, then that means that every single step of the ecosystem under the food chain of under the predator has to also be pretty healthy. And so it's probably the biggest sign that you have a really healthy ecosystem if you see larger predators taking down animals, as much as you would, maybe some people wouldn't like to see that. I think it's not a bad sign in any way. That's just how nature works, and a sign of a healthy one. So hope you guys are doing well. Love y'all. Would appreciate any comments. Love for you to like and subscribe, and hopefully join me for the next video. Okay? Bye, guys.